Good morning, my friends. So we have come to the sixth day of our retreat, our reflections and so on. And we have been seeing for the last 5 days about our own identity as people called to the priesthood. And what does the priesthood really mean has meant traditionally the threefold function that they are obviously sacramental priests offering sacrifice to God, etc., in the name of the people. They're also prophets to proclaim God's word in various ways, in writing, in preaching, and in proclaiming. But then, and they're also leaders. They have to lead the community precisely to bring about God's kingdom more and more in the world, and so on. So these are the threefold functions of priesthood, in which eventually, as I say, all Christians should share, because eventually all are priestly community. The people whom we call priests are only sort of it's a servant role, service role for the community, and therefore it contains it refers to all of us, whatever position we have in the church. And today, therefore, after exploring a little what exactly is our function, now these functions are supposed to precisely fulfill in the world, that we are sent into the world precisely to be priests, prophets, and leaders. And therefore, how we can be prophets and leaders in the world of today, to be able to understand that, we have to first of all understand what the world is today. How does the world present itself to us, to other people? Therefore, today we are basically going to look at the world as such. So before we start our reflection, let us say a moment of prayer. As I have taken a prayer from Tagore. I will just say it myself, and you can follow it. This is my prayer to thee, my Lord. Strike at the root of penury in my heart. Give me the strength lightly to bear my joys and sorrows. Give me the strength to make my love fruitful in service. Give me the strength never to disown the poor or bend my knees before insolent might. Give me the strength to raise my mind high above daily trifles, and give me the strength to surrender my strength to thy will with love. Certainly, all of us need this strength for which Tagore is praying here. So today will speak about the world today, especially look at the challenges or mission that we encounter in this world. First of all, we are sent for a universal mission. The first companions of Ignatius himself and other companions, they offered themselves to Pope Paul III in 1938, ready to go wherever in the world there is need and wherever they are sent. And of course, they feel that the Pope is the best person to know the whole universe and where the needs are greater. And therefore, they offer their services to the Pope, ready to go wherever they are sent by the Pope, rather than choose themselves where to go. And of course, in the process, they also see that eventually, let us say, as the Pope sends them, they will be scattered across the world. And that might eventually, they may all become individualistic and lose their links as a group and so on. So eventually, they want to stabilize their group as a religious congregation. And that happens in 1939. And eventually, let us say, the Pope approves the new Company of Jesus in September 1540. Sorry, 1540. And as a matter of fact, Francis Xavier was the first missionary, so to speak, to leave Rome for India. Actually, another Jesuit was supposed to go to India with a companion, and he suddenly falls ill in Spain. And therefore, Francis Xavier replaces him. Though I don't think Ignatius quite liked it, because Ignatius loved Francis Xavier very much, and he probably wanted to keep him also because of his talents and so on in Rome. But there was a need for mission and ready to sacrifice anything for mission. So Francis Xavier also sent. Therefore, in that way, let us say the universal mission, if you like, starts precisely with Francis Xavier going to what they call the Indies. Of course, India. As a matter of fact, Francis Xavier did travel through Asia. So how does, if you look at the world today, what are the basic characteristics which we can think of? First of all, there is what we call the phenomenon of globalization. That the world, of course, consists of many countries. Of course, it's a vast universe. And of course, those days, people used to travel by ships, and say to come to India from Portugal might take months. And therefore, traveling was difficult. But whereas now today, the whole world has become one globe. You get into a plane and you can go anywhere within a day, within half a day actually, from end to end. And therefore, and then there's suppose the mass media, the television, the radio, which brings. I can see and listen to someone talking the United States and vice versa. And not only, let us say, the mass media, but our own cell phones today. We can speak to people who are living abroad, seeing each other face to face. That way, the world has become one globe, one unit. Communications, mobility, information, and therefore that gives us the possibility of sharing the feeling community and helping each other materially also, but much more intellectually, psychologically, etc. But the globalization also is a globalization of existing inequalities and exploitation. That the world has become one, but it is not uniform, it is not equal. People in this one world are not living equally. There are rich countries like, let us say, the United States of America or Europe, and poorer countries in Asia and Africa. And within even the poor countries, there are groups of people who are rich, who are control the politics, economics, trade, etc., etc., and people who are workers, who are sometimes without anything, poor people, and so on. And in the world, of course, there is a world trade going on, give and take. Things are taken through ships today, perhaps through planes and so on. But then there are trade monopolies. There is some big company that takes control of all the iron ore available in the world, so to speak. They control the whole thing, or maybe a group of people control everything. And therefore, there is a trade monopoly. And therefore, once you monopolize a certain good, then you can fix the price in which that is made available to others. So that way, it's also not only a trade, but it's also an economic kind of monopoly, if you like. And then precisely in order to protect these possessions that you have to facilitate trade and so on, you also bring in the military, political, the military power, precisely in order to protect your goods, your trade goods and so on. It is not just for, let us say, political or a military domination, but very often it was trade oriented in the beginning. And of course, following the trade orientation, eventually, let us say, a certain amount of cultural domination may also take place. But then basically, it is much more, the economic is oriented to politics. The politics is oriented to, again, trade. And of course, in this kind of a situation, when we want to do something in mission, we also have to be global in a way. We have to reach out to, and we have to network as global movements and so on. We have to, we are obviously a global church. We say we are a Catholic church, we are a universal church. Therefore, we are present everywhere. We also have a global network, a global solidarity. But of course, what happens, of course, is that this globalization somehow at some stage becomes hierarchical. There are, at the economic level, there are the richer countries and the poorer countries. At a political level, there are people who have the atom bombs, who control big armies, arms, and so on. And then there are poor countries who cannot defend themselves. In the same way, also in the society, we have a hierarchy. We have the Pope and the bishops, and then we have got, let us say, the richer churches and the poorer churches, where, let us say, the missionaries come from the church that's already well established in Europe and America, maybe. And then today, of course, let's say missionaries go even from India and Africa, missionaries may go to the West elsewhere. but still there is certain inequality, economic inequality also there. Therefore, there's a structure, a hierarchical structure, if you like. So in this kind of situation, global situation, what exactly would be our Indian contribution as Indians and as the church Christians in India? In this sense, let us say, this is, as a matter of fact, let's say, today Indians also go a little everywhere. Of course, we have also Indian entrepreneurs, rich Indians, companies, and so on. But much more, let us say, Indians also go out to work to earn their livelihood, and they go across East Asia, they go to the United States, they go to Africa, they go to Europe, everywhere. Whichever country you will go, you will find a small Indian community, small or big, depending upon the situation. So therefore, in a sense, that way, Indians also have become global in that sense, that then you have a second characteristic is, of course, is what we call communal consumerism. Of course, it is based upon people really, of course, people today live, work hard, and earn money, and they want to enjoy life. They want to have the comforts. They want to buy things, eat well, dress well, etc. And they want to affirm their status by having a good house, a good car, maybe, or a good dress. And then, so they want to possess things. Then, of course, they want to feel rich. So they buy gold, amass wealth, or having their big bank accounts and so on. So they want this idea of a possession, or even clinging to these goods, as Buddha said. And therefore, because of this inequality at this level of economics and politics, there's also a certain amount of individualism, that ultimately you look after yourself and you see the other as somehow or other different, sometimes as enemy, opposed to you, from whom you have to defend yourself. Especially if you are rich, you are afraid that the others might come and eventually take away what you have, etc. Therefore, you want to defend yourself, protect yourself. Some of the rich people get together. So here comes politics, if you like. And here, this is no longer a real human relationship. It is much more sort of an animal instinct, to control, to possess, etc. And of course, then there is competition, and this competition leads to violence, where eventually the people who are more power, who try to oppress the others and exploit others. And this is also a sense of egoism, that ultimately it is what I want, or what my group wants. And therefore, there is no real regard for the others, except to see them as people to exploit. And therefore, there is no real regard for the other, for the community. Sometimes even in the family, you see divisions between brothers. There is no give and take. So it's very sad, but it is there. Sometimes parents feel neglected and so on. And therefore, in this sense of, there is a sense of power, political power, and economic power, and domination, and so on and so forth. And once you have the distinction between the people who have power and people who do not have the power, then of course there is unjust and unbridled exploitation, and this leads also to destruction of the goods that we all should share, the goods of creation. Creation is a gift of God to all peoples, but eventually certain people who have the political and economic power monopolize parts of it, and eventually deprive the others of their share. And in this, the media also plays the role of eventually, let us say, the people who are suffering, and somehow or other, the media, the entertainment, sort of keeps them sort of happy, forget a little their suffering, and so on and so forth. So therefore, very often the media play a role of pacifying the people who are suffering, and therefore it plays a role of domination in the hands of the people who are rich, who are powerful, etc. At the same time, this entertainment creates a kind of a dream world, where even if you are not actually living in the dream world, you are at least living it in imagination, looking at your favorite actor or actress enjoying life there, and somehow or other you identify yourself. That way, you try to get a little out of the pain that you are undergoing, etc., etc. And sometimes the mass media can also be used by the rich and the powerful to spread misinformation, and to stoke desire and violence, precisely in order to promote their own profit in this way. Then you have secularism. that in the past, let us say, one of the reasons why even today, I suppose, even today, let's say, people go to church. Now, why do the people go to church? Even the rich, leave alone the poor. It's always you want to ask God for something. You have a problem, maybe a personal problem, maybe an economic problem, maybe a social problem, and when you feel helpless, you turn to God. You first turn maybe to more powerful friends among the humans. But when it doesn't work, then eventually God is to be the last resort, if you like. So therefore, some of the religion that we see around, where people are crowding for novenas and so on, is all need-based religion. It's not a real dedication to the Lord, but rather you go to Saint Anthony or to Our Lady of Perpetual Help and so on, asking for things in life that you want. But when people are better off, then somehow or other this need for religion seems to slowly disappear. They may still go to the church for Christmas, for Easter, or for an important local feast and so on and so forth. But the regular practice slowly sort of tapers off, so to speak. And eventually then people also get educated, and then they speak about science, technology, etc., etc. And in a sense, once you see that, you really feel that with your scientific techniques, you can control the world, you can control the people through psychological means, etc., etc. And therefore, a certain quest for ultimate meaning. Now, what is the basic end of life? What happens to me after death, etc.? You don't think of it till maybe a time comes when you are dying. Till then, you want to keep your life, protect your life, and then enjoy your life, etc., etc. And you don't think of what will happen to you after life, or is there another kind of life somehow. The materialism, so to speak, leads you away. And when there is some problem, then we go for miracles, we go for mediators, we make novenas, we make offerings, and so on and so forth. And we also have today gurus who promote this kind of religiosity, where religion is seen precisely as a need-based religion, not really a heartfelt commitment to the Lord, and a certain leading to certain emptying of yourself, a self-renunciation in favor of others. You reach out to other people to help them, and so on and so forth. And then you have techniques like the yoga, Zen, and so on, that claim to be non-religious, and but they eventually, through meditation and so on, they lead you to certain amount of psychic, mental peace, etc., to liberate you momentarily from your tensions, etc. But not necessarily ethically based. Some of these, not always, but sometimes. Then you have pluralism, because the world today is a vast variety of races, castes, cultures, and religions, and therefore there is nothing that is monochrome. The castes are different, and they have different customs. The culture, Indian culture, is not an African culture. It is not European American culture. The arts, the technology, all this is different, because eventually these cultures are created by people, and therefore as the people are diverse, different places, speak different languages, and so on. They live in different countries, and therefore what they create also is different. So in that way, there is a pluralism, not only at the level of people of different races, castes, etc., but also the cultures which they create. And eventually, it's also pluralism of religions. You have, the big religions: Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism, and so on. But you have got also a number of minor religions, and each religion also has got sects, etc. So therefore, a certain amount of the personal freedom leads to, seems to have a certain amount of choice at all levels, culture, religions, and so on. And therefore, in this kind of a diversity, still, we have to react as one group eventually. So what happens, of course, is that there are people who are economically or politically powerful, and they bring groups together and they dominate. So therefore, the pluralism gives rise to what we can call hierarchy of people who have more power, people who have more money, people who have, say, more facilities, and people who don't have. You have the scale from people who have nothing to people who have everything, so to speak, if you can put it that way. And the people who have everything also have economic and political power to control the whole thing. So in this sense, eventually, let us say, we say we're all humans, but You are not human like me in the same way. Therefore, this leads also to identity conflicts of the rich and the poor. And this is complicated in India, for instance, by the caste system, where you have got superior caste, inferior caste, the castes who are richer, the castes who are poor, workers, etc. And at the global level, there will be a distinction between different races, obviously the whites and the others, the Asians and the blacks, and all have, they're not at the same political, economic level, even globally, so to speak. Though certain individual Indians may be as rich as Americans or Europeans, and yet India as a whole is poorer, let's say, than Europe or America, whatever, and African countries may be even poorer than India and so on. So therefore, all these different kinds of distinctions are there, and the pluralism is also oppressed in that sense. And where there is this kind of differences of rich and the poor, powerful and the powerless, that leads to certain amount of conflict. Let's say, in the past, what happened, of course, is that the whole idea of colonialism, that the European countries and eventually after the Americans also, they colonized countries like Asia and Africa, and precisely to exploit the goods growing here, that was coffee or rice or sugar, whatever, and therefore they take it for trading in Europe and make money out of it. So in that sense, let us say there is a whole, now of course, countries are becoming more and more independent, but we have gone through, the older among us, we have been sort of subject to the British rule and so on. So therefore, this kind of oppression at the global level also is there. And then because of the historical factor, there's also within other kind of tensions. For instance, it's always, let's say, India was one country after all. Then the British come, and then when they leave the country, they divide the country into Hindu India, so to speak, and Muslim Pakistan. And now India and Pakistan are constantly in tension. Somehow or other, we can't live like friends, though we have the same, very often the same ethnic kind of a group. We have same kind of a basic culture. We want the same country, etc. But we are divided. And even within India, we have had, let's say, in Tamil Nadu, in my younger days, we have had anti-Hindi agitation. There was a certain attempt for the North to impose itself on the South, etc. This has always been a problem for us. So the problem is, in this kind of a situation, sometimes we as priests tend to focus only on the religions and the sacraments and so on and so forth, and we don't look at the social and economic and the political tension that exists in the community, especially because, okay, the Christians on the whole tend to be poor, and you protect yourself, you try to be happy, earn your money and get jobs and so on and so forth, but then you don't look at the community as a whole. But positively, at the same time, today we also find there is a rise of the subalterns. They are coming up in life, they are protesting, they are making demands, they're agitating, and therefore it is not people are just sitting back and taking things as it is. And especially globalization today, let us say the telephone and other mass media, the email and so on, also facilitates organization networking, that if somebody starts an agitation in Chennai, you can have a sympathetic strike in Mumbai or Delhi on the same day, because ultimately, you can reach them immediately over the minute. And therefore, there is also a certain amount of organization among the poor, the people who are oppressed, who are fighting for their rights and so on. And therefore, there's also a quest for human and socio-economic rights, and people are ready to fight for it today. Fight for it, sometimes, let us say, useful means. Sometimes also they may take up arms. That, especially in poorer countries, you always have groups of people who are trying to have an armed revolution, and sometimes that leads to internal quarrels, internal wars, and so on. At the same time, everybody wants, especially in a democratic society, people more and more want a democratic order, and people want to participate in the political life of the country, and not allow one group of people to dominate over the rest and so on. In this kind of a globalization positively also gives rise to a globalization of religion, that, let's say, we are Christians, but at the same time, we have all the resources of the whole world open to us through the books or today through the mass media. You can switch on your TV and see what is the mass being celebrated in Italy by the Pope. So in that sense, there is also the positively, there is a possibility of enriching yourself, of feeling that sense of universal community. And therefore, then that way you move beyond the so-called need-based religion. Religion no longer is satisfying merely your needs, but religion is also satisfying your desire for integration, for communication, for collaboration, and so on and so forth. And at the level of spirituality, also today we have in India, for instance, everywhere we have monasteries, we have ashrams, we have various spiritual movements, and so on. They try to meet the spiritual needs of the people. Then you have what are the challenges that we are facing in this kind of a world, that we are, of course, we have to humanize individuals, integrating the different levels of their personality. So we have the physical, psychic, cultural, social, spiritual. Now, if I start explaining all this, we will need another hour. So I'm just mentioning this. I'm sure that as soon as you see the word, the adjectives, you know what I mean. Psychic is more to the soul, then cultural, physical, social, spiritual, and all these are, we have. So when we really have to grow and change, we have to grow in all these areas, and it cannot be simply monopolar kind of a whole. And then not only individually, we cannot really be today live alone in the country anywhere, and therefore we need a community. Therefore we build communities, but a community that is mutually that allows people to be mutually helpful, mutually supportive, and so on. Therefore, we are trying to build communities of sharing and service, dialogue and collaboration, and that offers an alternative, if you like, a certain individualism, a certain, let's say, loneliness, and so on, and it creates fellowship. But where there's a community like this, there is always likely to be certain conflict. So also we need means of resolving conflicts and bringing about peace. And there are people also involved, and we have got peacemakers and so on. And how do you promote reconciliation? So reconciliation, we speak of today that we need justice. We have to do justice. You cannot simply reconcile people who are opposed, where there is injustice involved. But then we precisely today speak of two kinds of justice. One is retributive justice, where you are fighting against each other, whereas another one is restorative justice, where you recognize that there are the people different at different levels and so on. All they have their rights. Therefore, you seek to protect the rights of all, and that also is justice. That is much more restorative justice that restores community, and does not lead to quarrels, fighting on in the name of justice. And at some stage, let us say that while some kind of attention is not avoidable, at that time you also have to have a certain sense of forgiveness, that ultimately you are as a community, and if there are some tensions, if some people misbehave, etc., you forgive them and you go forward, and that therefore all these are necessary precisely to build a community. So in this kind of a situation, we cannot always bring about any big economic and political or social transformation as priests, because primarily this kind of social activity is not primarily for the priest. The priest can encourage, he can inspire. Ultimately, the people have to take it up. The priest also can work at the level of ideology through his preachings, writing books, etc., etc. For instance, we may have heard of the liberation theology from Latin America, for instance. We also have Dalit liberation theology or tribal liberation theology, and so on. So at that level, the priest can be active, but at a more concrete level, the lay people have to participate. But the priests, because of our schools, because of the mass media, etc., we can train leaders who can lead the people. Therefore, we do have a role of training and so on. So in this kind of a thing, we can ask ourselves certain questions. What are the important challenges for mission that today Tamil Nadu and India and the world present to us from the point of view of our charism and the focus. At the level of our own personal levels, how the life, the community affects us, the media affects us, and so on. At the level of the community, the church as a group, what kind of tensions do we face in our parish or in our community in which you are, the religious community, etc. And also in the secular world, when we are at the political level, at the economic level, at the social level, and so on. There are also tensions, the level of culture. Culture, of course, is, let's say, the people who celebrate life, for instance, the media, say, for instance, we have a much developed, let's say, if you take Tamil Nadu, for instance, we have a much developed media, you know, all the big studios, film studios in Chennai, for instance. And therefore, we have the films and we have the televisions today. And what kind of ideologies do they communicate? And how far as they inspire people to do something positive? In how far sometimes the media can be used also to excite people to revolution, for instance, to violence and so on. So all this today, let's say, we have the possibilities, at the same time can also be negative, and how careful we can be. And how religions normally are supposed to lead us to each other, to build community and lead us to God. And before God, we live and work together as one brotherhood and sisterhood. And yet, religions can also be used as, let us say, at the level of between religions. Further, let us say, we for many years, we Christians, we felt that we are the one true religion, and we went about trying to convert everybody. But today, let us say, at the Second Vatican Council, we recognize there are also good and holy elements in all other religions. And today we speak more about dialogue and collaboration with religions. And of course, if this dialogue leads to people, for some time they want to change religions and so on, we are open to the idea. But we are focusing much more today than converting. As even today, these days, the papers are speaking precisely about this idea of conversion in the papers today, these days, couple of days. So therefore, here the focus today is not so much as a conversion, but collaboration. But in the process of collaboration, obviously, let us say, if a person is being attracted by one particular religious ideology and so on, there's a possibility also of changing conversion and so on. I should be open to this, to respect the freedom of the people. But at the same time, we also should not force any kind of a force or diplomatic kind of a pressure and so on should be avoided. So what we should insist on precisely is much more inter-religious dialogue, and not inter-religious conflict of whatever kind. And therefore, through dialogue, we seek to collaborate, we seek to promote religious and human values in society together. And this is what we need today. So given this kind of a background, so looking at the world, you can think about your own experience of the world around you from the points I have given you. But then for a prayer, let us say, eventually, basically, God sends us to the world. And basically, the one commandment that God gives us precisely is love one another as I have loved you. Therefore, we are sent into the world to transform the world to a better community. But this transformation must happen through love. That means through dialogue, through reaching out, through searching for collaboration, protecting the weak, reaching out to the poor. And so therefore, this is the love must be the basis of any kind of interaction between the humans to build a community. And in this kind of building community through love and so on, what we need is the leaders who are not dominating and who are not sort of promoting kind of a hero worship, and who are not promoting kind of a violent means of doing something, but rather a leader who serves. We need serving leadership. And of course, Jesus gives us an example. And when on the last day of his life, he washes the feet of the apostles, giving them an example of what they should do. Therefore, the leadership of Jesus was not a dominating leadership. He did not develop an army. He did not preach a revolution, but he was preaching a real personal transformation a transformation that eventually will make you more humble, more loving, more helpful, etc., than more exploitative, more dominating, more controlling, and so on. And this love of each other precisely is shown in eating together. See, when we have our dinners and so on, obviously we don't invite our enemies to come and eat with us. Therefore, eating is a process where we share food, but sharing food is a symbol precisely of sharing fellowship, sharing love, sharing each other's goods, and so on and so forth. And therefore, the Eucharist being a table fellowship precisely symbolizes for us every time we participate in it that all the people who come there to share the food that Jesus has become, the body and blood of Christ, eventually we also come there not merely for this kind of a ritual ceremony. Ultimately, we experience community coming together. Which should be precisely shown in what happens in the parish outside the church. Outside the church, in our social life, how much we really work together, how much we meet each other's needs, how much we collaborate, promote, to reaching out to the poor, also the non-Christians, and so on. How much we are ready to give ourselves, self-sacrifice. All this is, and this may be also an occasion to read St. Paul's letter, 1 Corinthians chapter 13, where St. Paul has a whole long discourse about love. What does it love mean? How love expresses itself in various ways, and so on. You can take this chapter and read through it slowly, meditatively, spend some time over it, and then see how much you can experience, express this in your own life in relation to others, and so on. I also recommend chapter 3 of the letter of St. Paul to the Colossians, where also it speaks about love again. And then take the chapter and read it slowly and try to inspire yourself just to draw in all those sentiments that Paul talks about love, and see how much in our own life we are really people who love each other completely. And that is the only way by which we can create community. That is the only way that we can reach out to others and build a human community that on growing wider and wider, eventually hoping that we will have really a cosmic community of people who love each other, who help each other, who serve each other, who support each other, and what can we contribute in our own little way. So let us spend a day on this, trying to reflect, therefore looking at the world today, the kind of a problem, the tension that there are, and what we can do in the world of today to promote a living community of love and fellowship. Thank you.
Morning, friends. Today we shall take meditation and Lectio Divina for our prayer. Before I indicate the passages, I would like to share with you the different stages in our prayer life which the Eastern tradition gives us, so that Father has been mentioning that we need to become human. We need to love without any discrimination. The Eastern tradition gives 4 levels in our inward journey: mental, psychic, intuitive, and heart. So we begin, I'm taking the example of mantra meditation to explain these 4 levels. Mental level, you just mentally repeat the mantra. That is maybe the Nam Japa, Jesus my shepherd. It remains at the mind level. And then comes the psychic level, that you keep repeating again and again. This repetition takes us into the unconscious. That is where we meet with roadblocks, number of difficulties that Father mentioned in today's world. We probably registered in the unconscious, and we need to go beyond the unconscious. That is the psychic level, subconscious you can call it. There are a number of blocks. Once you continue to repeat the mantra cuts into the unconscious, and brings all those blocks to the conscious level and releases those things from our system, from the subconscious. You continue to recite the mantra again and again. From the subconscious, you move into the intuitive level, where the mind comes to a rest, and then evolves. The God experience evolves there. That is intuitive level. And then once again, you continue, you reach the heart level. That is where the transformation takes place. There are people who propose another method in order to reach this level. That is, Father talked about the energy centers in his previous talks. There are 7 chakras, energy centers in our body. The important ones are, in order to reach the beyond the mental level and reach the heart, the intuition takes place in the Anya chakra, that is this eyebrow center. Then comes the Anahata chakra, that is the heart chakra. These are the places where it is the seat of wisdom and seat of knowledge. Seat of knowledge is Anya chakra, seat of wisdom is Anahata or heart chakra. So the masters suggest that while you begin the meditation, concentrate maybe 5 minutes in the Anya chakra. After you bring your body to rest or calm your body and mind, then you concentrate on your Anya chakra for 5 minutes. Maybe for another 5 minutes, you concentrate on your heart chakra. Then you move into your meditation. And then finally, end it again 2-3 minutes Anya chakra, another 2 or 3 minutes heart chakra. There is an integration that will take place. That's why Eastern tradition always says meditation is very therapeutic because it moves beyond the mind and moves into the subconscious and removes all the unwanted things that we have registered and brings to the conscious level and release us from those negativity, so that eventually we become men of divine presence. And once we become men of or women of divine presence, then easy for us to face the challenges which Father has proposed today. And for this, he himself has proposed a few passages. I only suggest the methods. Love commandment. We can take the Ignatian meditation, what I said, read, reflect, respond. That intellectual experience, emotional experience, and affective experience in order to be effective in our ministries. That is number one. Number two, you can use the method which I shared with you, Lectio Divina. Read. As soon as you notice that one particular word appeals to you, you stop reading and reflect on that passage. After that, you respond, talk to the Lord what you have reflected, and then the fourth step is remain in silence in the presence of the Lord. That you can take 1 Corinthians 13, Colossians chapter 3. These two things can be taken for using the method Lectio Divina. I also suggest that you take temptation of Jesus, Matthew 4, 1 to 11. You can take it as a meditation, using, reading, reflecting, responding. That will also help us how Jesus faced his own challenges in his own life, so that will help us how to face challenges in the world that we live today. I'm sure we not only stop with the mental meditation, mentally just repeating few things, but we will move into psychic and the intuitive level, so that we are able to recognize the inner voice movements, and as leaders, we are able to make proper decisions and lead our people in the right direction. So let the prayer or the meditation that we make reach the heart level so that the transformation takes place at the heart level.
You have to believe in yourself. You have to believe in your ability. You're capable of anything. You can achieve any dream. Please don't limit yourself. Don't live your life limited. It's not all sadness and misery. Life's a challenge, but you will succeed. Take control of how you feel in every circumstance. Work on yourself daily. Your story's far from done. The best is yet to come. To achieve, you must believe. You can live out all your dreams. Persevere, you'll make it through. What you need is all in you. When you believe, you will achieve. You can live out all your dreams. It's about time you knew the truth. You got the power all in you. You have to believe in yourself. You don't have to hide anything. You can be your true self. Don't need to follow society. Never forget that you're blessed. Give thanks for everything.